To quote a famous Eminem song, guess who's back? Back again. Hodgson's back. Tell a friend. Yes, this is the story of Roy Hodgson's return to the English Premier League. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Today's video we're going to be centering around this Crystal Palace story of their managerial situation. We're going to be talking about the return to the Premier League of Roy Hodgson. Incredible stuff. I didn't think we'd see it in 2023. A 75-year-old Roy Hodgson return to the Premier League in this way, shape, or in any way, shape, or form. But yet, here we are in 2023, and we're going to be talking about his return, not just to the Premier League, but his return to Crystal Palace, obviously days after the sacking of Patrick Vieira. Coincidentally, on St. Patrick's Day, not a good day for Vieira in that aspect. And we're like I say, we're going to be talking about this story. We're going to be talking about Roy Hodgson. We're going to be talking about Patrick Vieira. We're going to be talking about Crystal Palace and everything else in between. But before we go any further, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always greatly appreciated. But for now, let's get into this story. Strange one. Very much a strange story, this one, for a few reasons. For me personally, I see it as a backward step for Crystal Palace. A couple of years ago, Roy Hodgson left Crystal Palace and the timing was right. It was time for a change, and Palace definitely went with a different change in a different direction in Patrick Vieira. Now they've decided to take a backward step because they're fearing relegation. The story is that whilst this isn't completely confirmed, done and dusted at the time of recording, this is set to be an announcement that will be made imminently. Roy Hodgson, maybe at the time of this video going up, maybe sometime in the very, very, very near future, within the next 24 hours or so, Roy Hodgson will be officially confirmed as the new Crystal Palace manager, it seems. Like I say, to me, a bit of a backward step. You go from Roy Hodgson, who bit old-fashioned, old school, experienced manager, I guess put it politely, to something completely different in Patrick Vieira. Young, fresh, interesting, intriguing, exciting. A manager with different ideas, fresh ideas, and a different ideology and philosophy to what Roy Hodgson was bringing before. It was going to be a completely different change to Crystal Palace. It was going to be a completely different culture shock, a completely new dynamic, and he brought that because he brought a different way of playing. He tried to make Crystal Palace more technical and more better on the ball. More of a passing team, shall we say. Completely different to the ideology of Roy Hodgson. And what you saw last year from Patrick Vieira was a platform to build upon. It was a decent finish to the season. It was a decent season throughout. It was a solid campaign. They proved to be quite difficult to beat at times. They gave some of the bigger dogs of the league, the bigger teams of the league, a good run for their money. And to say that he wasn't exactly blessed with a lot of cash either, he managed to make the most of what he had. The loan signing of Conor Gallagher, for example, proved to be a very good eye and a very good purchase. What's happened since then has seemed to be a bit of a stagnated season, maybe even a backward step a little bit of a season, because Palace find themselves in a relegation battle, and Palace also find themselves in the midst of an abysmal run in 2023, and it's kind of led to obviously Patrick Vieira being sacked. They've not won in the Premier League in 2023 of Crystal Palace. A few draws here and there perhaps, but no win. No 3 points taken from a single game in 2023. And that run has ultimately led to Vieira being sacked because their league position is a solid 12th place finish, a solid 12th place standing right now. sounds good, but when you put it more into context, you can kind of see why maybe they might have pulled the trigger. They are in 12th place, but they had an absolutely abysmal 2023. No win in 2023 in the Premier League. They are the joint lowest goal scorers in the division. They don't score enough goals. Their top goal scorer is on 6 with Wilfried Zaha, and then you're looking down at the likes of, I think it's Eze and Odsonne Edouard with like 3 goals apiece, and then you've got Elise with 2, and so on and so forth. So they don't score enough goals. No win. And when you look at the gap that's developing between 12th and 11th, there is an 11-point gap there between Aston Villa in 11th and 12th place Crystal Palace. Now, you might be thinking 12th place might not be a bad standing, but when you look below them and you look at the relegation zone, the gap is much shorter between the relegation zone and Palace to Palace and Aston Villa. There is a 3-point gap between West Ham in 18th and Crystal Palace in 12th. West Ham also have the possible advantage of 2 games in hand over Crystal Palace. Leicester, who are above West Ham by a place, also have a game in hand over Crystal Palace, as do Nottingham Forest, as do Leeds, who are in 14th. So it's possible that Palace could find themselves in free fall down the table should those games in hand go in those teams' favour. My opinion on this is I feel like this manager was always facing a bit of an upwards battle in terms of money, in terms of finances, in terms of having to compete in that sense. I felt like he was having to change a lot about the club from the old regime, and it needed to obviously be a bit more sustainable, maybe with the influence of money. I think when you look at that Crystal Palace team, it's a very young squad. There are, of course, experienced players scattered through it in parts. The goalkeeper, pretty solid all season. Wilfried Zaha, of course, been there many a year now. But for the most part, it was young players that were going to be built up. Young players that were going to try and change the culture and try and change the ways and the dynamics of the way that this club had been in the past. And maybe that lack of experience maybe didn't do Patrick Vieira any favours. Maybe the lack of experience there in key areas may have cost him some big games, may have cost him some games in this kind of run-in that has seen him lose his job. Maybe that was kind of the case. From the outside looking in, I can only make these kinds of suggestions. But I did feel like he needed to be given a chance. I did feel like he needed to be given a much more stronger chance than what he did. And I think when you look at the games that are coming up, yes, they are massive encounters. They are huge encounters, and there's a big common theme in pretty much all of Crystal Palace's remaining games this season. But they are winnable. It is a run in which Palace could easily turn their fortunes around. It's a run in which they could easily keep their heads above water for another campaign. At home, when the international break ends, they are at home to Leicester. They are away to Leeds. They are then away to Southampton. They are then away, home to Everton, away to Wolves, home to West Ham, away to Spurs, home to Bournemouth, away to Fulham, home to Nottingham Forest on the final day of the season. Now, the common thread there, if you haven't guessed it, is that all of those fixtures, bar the Spurs game, are all against teams that are below them. Those games are favourable, but they are also massive encounters against the teams that are below them currently in the table. Leicester 17th, Leeds 14th, Saints rock bottom, of the table, and so on and so forth. All apart from that Spurs game. And let's face it, with Tottenham, you've always got a chance. I don't care who you are. With Tottenham, you've always got a chance that they always can have those banana skin type of fixtures. This one could definitely be one of them. Vieira could have easily turned it around, in my opinion. Injected a bit of confidence, bit more luck or consistency in front of goal. Whatever it may be, they definitely could have got a bit more luck, but it just wasn't clicking for Vieira in terms of an attacking aspect, which is why they didn't win enough games, which is why they weren't scoring enough goals. They were conceding a few cheap ones at that. And ultimately why he ended up paying the price. But like I say, I think with young managers these days, it's very easy to just make the call to give the chop. And let's face it, he got a call very early in the morning on St. Patrick's Day. Not the kind of call that he was probably expecting or wanting to hear. But it is what it is. The baffling part of this story, though, for me, is that they have gone back to their ex in this situation. Roy Hodgson's name was mentioned instantly right off the bat of this announcement that Vieira was going to be sacked, and I couldn't quite believe it, because I don't understand why you'd go through this entire year and a half, year and a bit, whatever it may be, of change to try and change the club, to try and change the entirety of the club at that, change a new dynamic, a new philosophy, and new ideas, try and put all of these things that's new, fresh, and exciting into this club, and then go back to what you had before. Now, don't get me wrong, Hodgson's obviously a very experienced manager. Hodgson is someone that knows the Premier League inside and out, has been in relegation battles time and time again, and pretty much knows how to get the job done. And fair play to him at 75 years of age. If he still thinks that he can do that, he still thinks he can do a job for any kind of team, fair play to him. I just don't get the plan of Crystal Palace right now. Now, he is being said to be in charge till the end of the season at the very least. So have they got someone lined up to take over him at the end of the campaign? But then that's another new manager who probably bring in new ideas, a different philosophy, and everything else that's different about him. I don't get the thought process to this. I get that the whole main goal is to stay above water and to maintain their Premier League status. I do get that. I just don't understand the whole long-term aspect of this. The long-term aspect was Patrick Vieira. The long-term aspect was to try and help him build up this team of youngsters to be a better club, better squad, more forward-thinking, much more fresh, much more different and exciting and intriguing. And now you've gone back to a bit of a dinosaur, with all due respect, a bit of an old school kind of manager in Roy Hodgson, at least until the end of the season. I get that, but I just don't get the long-term picture in this story. And for me, that's why I'm baffled. That's why I am a bit baffled as to why Crystal Palace would do this and not just try and stick it out with Vieira for the long run. It'd be interesting to find out if this is going to help Crystal Palace at all. I still think whether they had Vieira or not, I still think they'll keep their heads above water, because I think they've got a decent young squad, and I just think it needs just a shot of confidence, a shot of consistency, and they will ride out the rest of this campaign pretty well, shall we say. Pretty well, with all things considered. And like I say, with the fixtures they've got coming up, whilst the other teams might be looking at Palace thinking it might be a favourable fixture, I think Palace can also look at the fixtures they've got as favourable fixtures. Even that Spurs game, which is kind of the odd one out in these games, because, let's face it, all of the teams that Palace now face between now and the end of the season are all teams that are below them. But it is going to be interesting to see if this is obviously going to work out. I, for one, am a little bit baffled by it. I don't fully understand the long-term plan of Crystal Palace, and I personally would have liked to have seen them stick with Patrick Vieira. But as I always say, these are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of this Patrick Vieira and Crystal Palace saga? What do you make of Roy Hodgson coming back to the Premier League? Is it a good appointment for Palace? Is it a smart appointment? Or is this just another stopgap to try and secure them Premier League survival? I don't know what your guys' thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it on this particular topic. I'm sure they'll make for interesting reading down below in the comments section. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up. Enjoy the video, subscribe if you're new, want to see more content like this. Both things will always and forever be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I'll see you all again soon in another video.